How are
Well,
you?
good evening, and thank you very much for attending one of the half dozen consultation meetings which we are conducting over the present week and into next week. I'm Richard Rawlinson. I'm the chair of the working group of executives and members that has been planning the two projects, the North Wing and the West Wing, and working with the architects and other professionals to define the requirements and examine the alternatives for meeting those requirements. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes going through the plans, and if anything is unclear, please let us know. Stick up your hand, your electronic hand, and I'll stop and explain. If you've got comments about what we should do differently or improvements that can be made, let's hold that to the end, and then we'll take them at that time. So as I go through, questions of clarification, and then we'll get into an open discussion about the proposals. I'm going to cover all the facilities, not just those related to children, although this group was recruited as having a particular interest in the children's facilities, which are a very important part of the plan. But I'm sure you'll also be interested in other aspects of the project as well. Now, can we go? Here we are. We started our work by developing a comprehensive set of requirements that we're trying to meet in the North Wing and or the West Wing. And the requirements are quite detailed. The one just that we gave to the architect for the West Wing is 6 pages long, and it covers all the requirements to operate the facilities effectively, as well as those that directly relate to members and to member experience. So I'm just going to run through a very simplified version of the requirements, focusing here on the things that members use and see. We are, we're also going to provide for many of some facilities for staff, reception, cleaners, storage, etc., etc. Starting at the top left up here, one of the key objectives has been to improve the gym by providing more space. The gym has already been expanded twice, but members tell us that the more active enthusiasts don't find the equipment that they need in the current gym. I mean, we've really optimized it for older members, for members who are a little bit less expert. And while there are free weights and other facilities like that, the space allowed for them is rather small. And we know that there are significant numbers of members who don't find the facility sufficient for their needs and are often paying for a gym subscription separate from Hurlingham so that they can get access to the equipment that they want for their workouts. If we get more space, one of the prime objectives is to provide a more complete range of equipment so that a wider range of members using the gym can find that their needs are taken care of. Now, we also get crowding in the gym at certain times, and that'll be relieved as well. The studios is the space that we use for classes, Zumba and dance and things like that. And the big studio at the moment is in the West Wing, and it's a big space and much loved, but it's not a very efficient configuration. The changes we hope to make on the studios is not so much to increase the overall square meters, but rather to reconfigure it so that instead of having one big area, much of which is used for storage, we would have separate storage and two studios so that we could run two classes at once. That has a big benefit because it means that we can more efficiently schedule instructors and provide instructors with a complete morning of work at Hurlingham, as opposed to just 1 or 2 hours. And that, in turn, means that we have a much better opportunity to attract the best instructors. And the quality of the instructors is essential to the quality of the member experience. So it's a little bit more complicated than just sort of renewing the facilities of the studios. We want to make them a bit more functional, a bit more operational, and get the benefits to member experience that way. We also have a reformer Pilates at the moment, which is in one of the old squash courts, and we want to preserve that facility, not, of course, in that location. And we have hoped that we could consolidate everything together, studios and gym, in the north wing, together with a treatment room. So then we would have a single facility where gym, studio, treatment are all together, and there are efficiencies of operation, but also from a practical point of view, it means there's going to be a bit more interchange between users of gym equipment and the studio users. And when studios are not in use, they can be used as additional space for gym users to stretch or do exercise or whatever. And so there's quite a lot of benefits for that. And similarly, if we can put the treatment room in the same space, then the physios can work with instructors and others to use the equipment as part of the physiotherapy, which they do. So that's the idea on the gym, the studios, and the treatment room. The second pool. The second pool is not a given, but it's an option. And the rationale is not just to improve capacity, which is really a function of the late afternoons and the weekends where we get busy, and there is a capacity problem, but it's also to enable a more flexible approach to operating the swimming pool. In particular, the second pool would be at a warmer temperature than the existing pool, and that's very important for children. We're told that quite a lot of children get cold after 15, 20 minutes or whatever in the current pool, which is optimized for people who are swimming up and down doing laps. If we have a second pool, we can operate that at a higher temperature, which is more suitable for lessons, more suitable for children, but also more suitable for older people who don't necessarily want to do laps with great energy, but enjoy a more leisurely swim. The second pool would also have variable depth, so it can be optimized one time for children and later on perhaps for adults doing aquarobics or something like that. The third area here is the spa area. At the moment, we have a jacuzzi, we have a steam room, we have a sauna. Now, those facilities, particularly the sauna, are too small. So one of our objectives is to expand those facilities. But it's also become clear that there will be benefits to grouping those together, combining them with some other facilities, which are now quite common in health clubs: an experience shower, a relax area, perhaps a plunge pool. And although we're not going to do massages and services like that, we can call that a spa area. And we can move the location for that so that it's not just an adjunct to the pool around the side of the pool, but has its own area. And as you'll see in the plans, we're planning a separate adult-oriented area on the first floor, accessible from the pool, but separated from the pool. I'm told that it's not ideal for members to move from the sauna directly into the swimming pool. So there are quite a lot of benefits to having a distinct spa area And that's what's included in some of these plans. Now, the children's area. That is a core objective in the West Wing. And we know that we need larger baby play, soft play, junior games, and perhaps also somewhere for people to do homework with their parents. And we'd like to make sure that the indoor facilities start to match the rather good outdoor facilities which we have. And that means more space, but it also means getting the arrangement of those spaces right so that they relate to each other, they relate to areas where parents are wanting to be, because it's essential that parents supervise their children. And it's essential also that they relate to the places where people are going to have weekend lunches, because we know that Jungle Tumble is a great bonus for the weekend family lunches. Changing rooms. Changing rooms was the facility that got the most criticism when we did the satisfaction survey 3 or 4 years ago. Members love our grounds, but they do not like our changing rooms. It's not entirely clear exactly what the problem is, and it's probably a mix of they're too small, they're slightly grungy, they're not really fitted out quite to the highest standard that people would expect. And while I don't think we're going to go for the sort of the most luxurious you could imagine, clearly there's a demand for them to be fitted out to a higher standard than they have been, and probably to give better sense of privacy as well. Family changing is one of the biggest problems at the moment. It's much too small, and that's going to get worse, of course, as the number of children increase. So the mandate to the architects has been to make sure that family changing is given a lot more space. And that, of course, will help also for the male and female changing, because at the moment, one of the complaints we get is that parents bring their children into the adult area, and that creates a number of problems. So the better the family changing, the more children will use it, and the more satisfactory it will be for everyone. Now, in line with the principle in the Horizon project to try and cater for all members from 1 to 101, but to try and cater more separately for members, so that people with different objectives from using the club, different standards of behaviour, are more separate than they are at the moment. In line with that principle, we made an early decision that there would be two eating facilities: the more formal restaurant, which is currently being constructed in the East Wing, and a less formal family cafe in the West Wing, bigger than the harness room, and with the capacity to expand to help cope with weekend lunches in conjunction with the new brasserie and with the polo bar. Now, the family cafe will be somewhere where children will be very welcome and will be very comfortable, but it will be used by all members. So it needs to have the flexibility inside it for there to be places where children can be very active, but also perhaps people who just want a coffee and perhaps studying on their laptop, where they can go as well. So we're trying to get different spaces for different uses, even within the family cafe, accepting that the more formal dining and the evening dining are going to the East Wing. So that's the basic objectives for members. And in addition, of course, we need improvements for back of house, cleaning, storage, staff, etc. And all that has an indirect benefit to members. Now, I don't know what this is going to cost, I'll be honest. We have just appointed quantity surveyors to examine the plans and to become a more integral part of the project. The hope and the expectation is that at least our base project will be consistent with the budget that was estimated at the time the master plan was approved a couple of years ago. And that amount is 22.8 million at 2025 prices. So that's the original number updated for construction inflation. And construction inflation is actually a little bit below RPI at the moment, but 22.8 million for both projects is what we're aiming at the moment. And of course, that has to include all things like, architects' fees, VAT, and so forth. I do not know whether either of the projects, any of the projects will be able to come in on that, but that's what we're aiming at. There will be improvements that are possible, which will probably take the budget up above 22.8 million, and it's for decision ultimately by members whether or not we want to do that. And one of the purposes of the consultation is to start to get a sense about what members prioritize and what ultimately they're willing to pay for. Okay, that's the basic brief. At the moment, we have a baseline outline design which meets most of these requirements, not quite all, and which minimizes the amount of construction that will be needed. And we also have an example here today of an upgraded plan, which involves more construction, which means more disruption, more planning issues, and undoubtedly more cost. And we want to give you an example of what could be achieved by an expanded scheme. So, and then there are many alternatives between the two. And as we start to develop those other alternatives, we want to get the feedback from as many members as possible about what the priorities are and what issues need to be addressed. And architects are currently working on those options, and we're going to be feeding the feedback from this meeting and others into their thinking. Our priority is to try and find the highest value for members with a budget that members are willing to fund. I mean, we're going to need the same levels of approval for this as we've achieved for the plan so far. And that means being very sensitive to what members' trade-offs are, including their financial trade-offs. And we're going to take the time to get that right. When I say timescale is secondary, I mean that we're not going to rush the process of getting the design and the plan right. It is going to be important to make sure that the actual construction time is minimized. It's not going to be a quick project, but we are hoping very much that the West Wing will be out of service for no longer than 2 summers and 1 winter, 15 months. And obviously when the indoor pool is out of service, the outdoor pool will be available, and in the winter will be heated up to a pleasant temperature. What we want to avoid is having the indoor pool closed for 2 winters. And I suppose it's possible that when we do the planning, we may find that some of the things that we might want to do would take longer to construct, and we might decide not to do them just for that reason, because we do know that one of the reasons that people rejected the 2018 plan was that the construction time would have taken 2 years, which a lot of people found a problem. Okay, so that's the current status. Now, let's go to the first option. And this is a bird's eye view, an eagle's eye view of the central area in the club. So here is the main building. This here is the swimming pool here. And that is not going to be changed. So one of the set briefs to the architects is do not alter the main pool. Once we start altering the main pool, we get a world of cost and difficulty. And indeed, that was one of the reasons why the last project plan would have taken 2 years to build. This blue is the area that would be newly constructed. And it's largely, but not quite the same footprint as the current building, and it would be somewhat higher here, so that the roof line is a little bit higher, giving better heights inside. Here over on the north wing, this area is currently a maintenance workshop. not a particularly attractive space, but it could be made attractive. And as it's contiguous to the gym here, it's the natural area to expand. And that is a relatively simple expansion of the gym. And that's the first thing that we'll be looking at. And the 4-in-hand yard here would remain unchanged under this plan. So that's the overview. So let's go to what we actually can achieve in the West Wing. And this, to remind you, is the layout of the current West Wing ground floor. So here you have the pool, the Vitality pool, or as normal people say, the jacuzzi. This is the family changing here, coming out here. Men's and ladies wet changing here. Dry changing here, men's coming off the corridor and ladies down here. So we've got dry changing and wet changing separate. Reception. These are the old squash courts, which are now used, for Pilates, junior games, soft play, and, golf simulator, etc. And obviously there where we're using the spaces as they were, rather than designing them for those purposes. And then over here is the current harness room, kitchen, and server. Oops, where have we gone here? Sorry, beg your pardon. Sorry, I've got, yeah, here we are. Kitchen and servery, and the eating, of course, is in the harness room here, when it's not in the rose court in the summer. So that's what we have currently. Now, under this plan, we would reconfigure the ground floor, and this gives you a plan. Here is the existing pool, that's unchanged. But here, where the squash courts were, is a second pool, and that might be 12.5 meters wide, long, and 4 lanes wide, or it might be a little bit longer and a little bit narrower, just depending on how you configure the family changing. The family changing is here and is very much larger than the current family changing. Again, just next to the second pool, which is a natural place for children to go, but there is direct access on the same floor here between the second pool and the existing pool. The changing rooms are here. And very importantly, there is no separate dry and wet changing. It's all combined here. This space is bigger than any one of those changing rooms, but it would be configured internally in zones. So it would have a zone where people would be coming in street shoes, somewhere around here, a changing area, and then a wet swimming area here. And it is possible to design spaces to create a natural order within the changing room, which improves the ambiance for everyone. We haven't done the design in detail yet, and we will need to check whether we can achieve our objectives in that way within this space. We hope we can, but if not, we would have to revise this space. And the same is true for men's and ladies. The ladies is actually slightly larger than the men's because although we have a pretty equal balance in terms of users, the dwell time in the ladies' changing room is longer than for men. Here is reception. Here is the kitchen and servery, and here there is cafe seating within the West Wing. So this is where the corridor is, and that becomes a seating area. We still have the harness room. Nothing's going to take the harness room away, but that would no longer be the primary place for cafe seating. The cafe is actually on 2 floors. I'll come to that in a minute. And the stairs here, which go up to the first floor of the cafe. So you've got cafe seating here, and you get 90 covers, which is in this configuration, which is quite a lot. We have 50 in the harness room at the moment. We still have the harness room available here, and we can use that in different ways, and perhaps it's used different times, different days of the week. It might sometimes be used by people sitting on their laptop, enjoying a cup of coffee. It might be used for people looking at Wimbledon or other sports. It might be used and would be used at the weekend to expand the space to cope with the peaks that we get on winter weekends, Saturday and Sunday at lunchtime. So we wouldn't exactly replicate the experience in the East Wing, but between the cafe, upstairs, downstairs, harness room, and the new restaurant, we will have a broader range of options. And here in the West Wing, the family dining is going to be very close to the children's facilities, because if you go upstairs, and here's the staircase from the down, you get a small upper cafe here, and here a balcony, an open outside balcony, which would have views down over the Dolphin Fountain, into the grounds, into the Rose Court here, and would be proximate to the children's facilities here. And here we've got a much bigger soft play area with some baby play here, a junior games room, a nursing room, and this is quite close to the cafe. So this cafe, it would be interesting to see how it will be used, but the balcony will draw people up. It might be a place to go with your son or daughter to do their homework. 10-year-olds might come for parentally supervised homework. People may retreat up here with laptops if there's football going on down here. But there's quite a lot of options here. Over here are the studios. We have a large studio and the Reformer Pilates. There's much more storage than there is at the moment. So the large studio will be as functional as the large studio that we have at the moment, though it'll be actually smaller. And the Reformer Pilates is similar to what we have at the moment. Now, the other big plus here is we get a spa area. This is accessed here from beside the pool. It can be accessed here, but this is really only for handicapped use. The normal access will be from the changing rooms into the pool area, then up the stairs and into this relax area, which has a sauna, a much larger sauna, steam room, jacuzzi, experienced shower and other showers in this area somehow. So there's a sort of distinct area which we're calling the spa area. So that's the sort of upstairs with a 2-story cafe, baby area, studio area, spa area, and of course this is the upper part of the pool. And you'll be able to see from here down into the thing. This I think is meant to be a sort of glass viewpoint down from the thing. So that's the West Wing. Now on the North Wing, under this option, the expansion is into the maintenance area, and that gives us a very straightforward gym expansion. And the usable gym space is extended by about 24%. So that 80 square meters is a 24% expansion of the usable gym area. This can be made, it's not attractive right now, but it can be made attractive, for example, by adding a top light lantern, but it's not big enough. It'll have quite high ceilings. So, you know, if you want to throw your dumbbells in the air, you can do it here. But it will not have enough space to accommodate 2 floors. So this is a 1-story extension, and the upper floor is essentially unchanged. We have a treatment room here. We can reduce the plant size, and there's a treatment room accessed here. We don't know whether we fill the void. I mean, the void adds considerably to the attractiveness of the gym, but you know, we get 5% more space, and we're currently doing the planning of the equipment to see whether or not that really makes a practical difference. And if we can keep the void, then we would. So the top floor is essentially unchanged, and West Wing upper floor. So how we're going to say. So this is going back to the the bird's eye view. You've seen this before. And I just want you to note just the configuration of the 4-in-hand yard. And this is the option 0, because this is changed in the next option, which is to build out the gym into the yard. In addition to expanding here, we would build it out and we would realign the 4-in-hand yard. So now it's on the same axis as the east wing, which is probably how you'd have designed it if everything had been done from scratch to start with. And there's a wall at the moment here which disappears. So we then get open views down into the cricket thing. Row of cars is moved. There's no change necessarily in the car parking space. But we have realigned the thing, and that gives us a big ground floor expansion here. There's a little bit of change here. I'll come to that, but very, very small. And that expansion of the gym gives us a whole amount of space. But we are using this partly in order to move the studios from the west wing to the east wing. So although the gym gets all this space on the ground floor, it's going to lose the space above, which will be used for studio. So we have one small studio here, which is used for some classes. But when it's not being used for classes, again, that can be used very easily by gym users here for stretch, etc., etc. The treatment room remains. The expansion into the maintenance area remains. We get, with this, a 9% increase in gym space compared to the option you just saw, and a 35% increase over the current gym space. And then, very importantly, on the upper floor, now there is a change and a change of use. We would use the gym space on the upper floor to be the large studio, and that would require us to fill in the light well. And we would have the current stretch space is up these little stairs here at the moment. That would become the Reformer Pilates. So what we have achieved now is we've created 3 separate studios. We've co-located it with an expanded gym and with a treatment room. So everything now of that type is in the north wing. And that has operational and other efficiencies. And it also allows us to do something different on the upper floor of the west wing. So in this scenario, the west wing benefits. Here, we've decided to use, in this thing, that the architect's suggesting using the extra space to create a larger cafe terrace on the floor. So this is the upper floor of the west wing, on the assumption that the studios have moved to the north wing. And that gives us perhaps a bigger cafe terrace. This is about 3 times the size of the cafe terrace before, similar sized upper cafe. And the spa is now swapped in location for the children's area. And the reason for that is that we can create a spa terrace. Apparently, it's popular to prance half naked outside, and that is allowed by this configuration. Here is the spa. It's the same facilities as before: sauna, steam room, jacuzzi. But there's a bigger area devoted to it, so it would be more comfortable. There might be a more experienced shower here, and in particular, you get this spa terrace. So all this becomes spa area. Again, access down from the side of the pool. Here we have the children's area. We have a baby play now has more space. It's separated out from soft play. Parents can be here. Here is soft play. Here is junior games, and we still have some space over here. And, you know, we suggested it might be the golf simulator, but it could be other things as well. We could put the golf simulator elsewhere, and we could make that a games area here. So that's the upper floor of the west wing. And the ground floor is very similar as it was before, except that we have a bit more space, and we actually have enlarged the pool. So this could become a 15-meter pool. But essentially, are essentially the same as before, slightly longer or slightly wider. This is a sort of schedule under these options of how much space you will get. And you can see that this first column is how much space we currently have in our facilities. The second column is what in our brief we asked the architects to see if they could provide. So, for example, we said in the gym, the current is 327, we'd aim for about 435. That's a sort of fairly detailed workup from activities to what we needed to accommodate them. Baseline 0 actually doesn't quite achieve that. It gives quite a lot more than we've got, but not quite 435. If we go into the yard, the space that we've allocated is actually slightly more than the brief. Reformer Pilates, slightly bigger. Other studios, smaller, but forget that a lot of this is used for storage, which would now be elsewhere. So these are functionally equivalent. The consolidation of wet and dry allows more efficiency in the use of space. And so we think we can take a little bit of, this is the combined men's, women's, wet and dry. Family changing sort of doubles in size, which is one of the key requirements. And we add baby play as a separate area. Soft play expands maybe by 50%. Junior games, again, another a good expansion. And the spa, this is a sort of sum of the area of the sauna and the steam room, and I think it's a sort of slightly fake number. But now we get really quite a generous spa here. And the cafe, the cafe seating, we said that we needed 90 seats in the weekday, and actually we achieved that just on the ground floor. In a way, the top floor is a bit of a bonus, but it does allow parents to bring and take their coffees up on the same floor as their children are playing, and it provides an extra option for homework, etc., etc. And it also becomes part of the solution for weekend dining room. So that's the sort of schedule of space, but there's lots of fungibility. So, you know, we can move space from these between these options, under these options, but the fundamental is that the expanding into the yard gives us more interior space. And in fact, it's really the only practical way in the central area of the club for us to get any extra significant additional interior space. It's a sort of, this is our option to expand the buildings as a whole. Okay, I'll stop there. And given sort of, you know, what would we find helpful? Well, the sort of the overall brief is set, but there's lots of questions about how we configure the space, and it'd be good to know what you see that you like, what may not work or could be improved, and also particularly how much value from extending the north wing footprint. It gives a bit more gym, but we lose the light well. We move the studios. And in particular, we have more options in the West Wing, maybe a larger cafe terrace, larger spa, larger changing rooms, larger soft play, other facilities like we can use that space in different ways, but it is certainly going to be more expensive and it may not be feasible. We may not get planning permission for it. So there's some uncertainty as to whether we can do that at all. Okay, let me stop there and start to get questions and comments. Yeah, Susie. If you could,
Right,
yes.
Thanks. Thanks for the presentation. I just had a question about accessibility on the top floor.
Yes.
Just thinking it's soft play, baby area, cafe. How do you foresee prams being allowed up there, and how would they get up there?
I think it's unlikely. I think we had consultation with young Hurlingham, and you know the guidance we had was that there should be pram storage outside, and that prams would not come in. Now, it might be possible in this area here, which is reception, particularly if we take this wall away, to find some sort of equivalent to the little bit of pram storage that we have in the just outside the swimming pool reception. You know, there's that little area in the corridor where there's a little bit of pram. We might be able to replicate something like that, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of prams up here. I don't think in the upper cafe that's going to work. There is a lift, which is here. And I think that, you know, can be used, but it's not, it's, you know, I think, you know, I mean, we're not envisaging prams up here. Maybe we should be. You know, that's a question.
Yeah, I guess then would you envision downstairs? I only say that because say you've got a newborn or even a 6-9 month, and you're going for a weekend lunch or whatever. It's actually really useful to have them in a pram sleeping, and you're like, score, great. I can actually sit down and eat. So somewhere where you can sit and eat and actually have a sleeping younger child with you, I think would be a useful area.
I mean, this has been set out really to sort of maximize seating capacity, but we might not want to do that. We might want, for example, to have here a pram area, you know, and that might be quite nice. So I think that's very helpful feedback on that.
And it might be the lower cafe, you can bring prams, and it's just that seating's configured so that they can sort of fit in, but that would just be one comment I had.
Yeah, I mean, one question is how we use the harness rooms. I mean, one option is the harness room is used more regularly for cafe seating, you know, with quieter area. And, you know, you could, you know, then we could obviously have fewer seats here and more flexibility on space. We haven't quite got the access routes right. I mean, at the moment, we have to bring food in this way. And I mean, if you think about it right now, taking food trolleys round here isn't going to work. So I think we've got to look a little bit at access, and I think pram access is one of the things we need to get right, and we haven't quite got that yet.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, but thanks for the presentation. Very useful.
Good. Other comments. Susie, is you still got a hand up or? No.
No, sorry, that was left over.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Any other comments, questions, observations? One of the questions in our minds is, you know, how much space should we be devoting to the spa? You know, that's at the moment, you know, there's quite a bit of space area, and it's in a way, this is the sort of, you know, facility that we don't really have at the moment, which could be created by this. There are expansions and improvements in soft play and in the changing rooms, but here is something which we don't really do at the moment. So it's a little bit hard to predict, you know, how members would use it. I mean, we know that our family changing will be used. We don't really know, you know, whether this larger, more elaborate spa terrace, spa area would be used. Sophie.
Hello, Richard. Thank you for your presentation. I'm intrigued about the capacity of the changing rooms. I notice on this version 2, the bigger version, there are some loos upstairs. Are those included in the square footage calculations that you shared with us when you explained the capacity of the men's and women's wet and dry combined?
No. Those are separate loos. There would be loos inside each of the changing rooms, and those loos are included in those calculations. But the loos here, which are currently on the first floor, those are separate. And the idea here is somewhere we need to provide loos that are neither, I mean, at the moment, people are in the harness room eating, and they can access the loos in reception. And some of them people go to the dry changing, but neither of the dry changing won't exist. The eating is further away from the harness room, so we need to put some loos that are not in the changing rooms somewhere. In this design, they're all on the first floor. There's some obvious problems with that, we may need to get some loos on the ground floor, but space on the ground floor is much tighter than space on the first floor. So under this current design, these are loos. And then in the changing rooms here, there will be also loos.
Thank you. You've shown the square footage change on a combined basis for men and women.
Yes.
Do you by any chance have that split between men and women?
I do. Is Ruth on the let's see, Ruth is on the thing. It'll take me Ruth, perhaps you could look that up from the architect's details. One thing I'd say is that under this plan, the ladies is about 10% bigger than the men's. The total is about 15% less, as I recall, than the combined wet and dry at the moment. But Ruth, if you know the numbers, perhaps you could tell us.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I think it's shown on this one that we've got the men's is about 120 square meters.
The current or the new?
The new, and the ladies, the new is 130. There's quite a lot of circulation in the existing setup, because obviously we've got them as dry and wet separately. So the efficiencies that we'd get mean that by reducing them slightly, we'd still get a much more efficient plan and more facilities within it. It's the family changing that really has increased quite significantly. It's about 50% bigger than the existing changing that we've got in there.
And what about thank you for that, Ruth. What about the existing men and women footage?
The existing, so the existing, if you combine the wet and the dry, the men's goes down very slightly. The ladies stays pretty much the same. But as I was saying, the efficiency that you'll get by combining the two means that you'll get more showers and more WC cubicles for the area that you've got in there. Does that make sense?
So we're not increasing the totality between the men. Can you give a split between the wet and the dry for the ladies, for example?
I can. I'll just need to look it up. 2 seconds.
Need to look it up. I saw that yesterday. It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, what we have to do is we have to do the planning within the changing rooms, and then we'll have to look at the space and make sure we can do it. The idea is to lay them out in a way that there is this logical separation of zones, but also that there is more sort of pods. And so without necessarily going to a lot more individual changing cubicles, we will have, somewhat less of an open area in that space. And the fit out will need to be of a somewhat higher quality than we've had so far.
I can confirm, Richard, actually, the men's at the moment we have 70 square meters and 61 square meters, which gives you a total of
61 being the dry.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Which gives you 131. So the proposal is that we'd have 120 in there. The female currently has 87 plus 69, which gives you 176, and we'd be putting 130 square meters in there. The family at the moment is 85, and that would go up to 120.
That's not correct. I think I got 65. You quite sure? I think that's
65. Apologies. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Any sort of reactions to that, Sophie? I mean, we're conscious that we need to get the right amounts of space, but it's hard to know exactly what that is.
The current dry side ladies changing space is quiet. The current ladies wet side changing space is frankly a zoo.
Right. The same is true on the men's. I mean, I use the dry side quite often. I've never showered there when anyone else has been present, not once. And the wet side, as you say, is a zoo. So we clearly have the wrong allocation at the moment. And, by combining it, I think we will get a much more pleasant, experience. One of the questions has been whether we put any changing in the north wing. The original intention was to do that, but the feedback from the people advising us and working with us has been that we would rather have space for gym activities, and people would rather have higher quality changing in the West Wing and more space for activities in the North Wing. Now, we'll obviously have loos in the North Wing, and we may make those quite generous as the ones there currently are. So, if you want to change change into gym kit, you could do it there. But if we were to do showers and things like that, on all the plans that we drew up to do that, the space available is pretty small and wouldn't be very attractive, and B, you lose quite a lot of activity space, because as well as the men's and women's, and of course disabled and so forth, you also need more space for plant. You have to have a heating, etc. You have to have something to power the showers. So it becomes really a real trade-off against the utility of the space. But that is certainly under the expanded footprint option. There is an option to put small amount of changing in the North Wing. Okay. Yes, Susie Toyne. You're on mute if you're trying to speak. Okay, Hermione.
Just to say, I think there's a question in the chat box that you might want to look at.
Okay. Can you tell me what that is?
Yeah.
Someone?
So there's actually a lot of people on the suggestion board have asked if there will be an indoor area where dogs are allowed, so that people can walk their dogs in the grounds and then in winter sit inside for a drink.
That's not planned.
Fine. And then another question, sorry, just reading it. The baby soft play in the option 3 West Wing seems to be in a corridor by stairs. That would not be ideal for crawling babies. It looks better in option 0. That's another comment in the chat.
So here,
yeah,
this is not these. Sorry, there's a wall here. There's no stair. This is a solid wall. So these stairs go down to the swimming pool, and they access the spa. And this door would normally be closed. So there is no stairs here. I mean, they are physically closed, but this is a solid wall here. So they can't get in here. The stairs are over here.
I'll let you know if there are any other questions that come up in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Long.
Oh, hello, Richard, again.
Hi.
Thank you very much. This is wonderful. I just listening to the questions about buggies upstairs and so on. Sorry, this might be a completely mad idea, but I know you're very kindly listening to everything on this first look. I just wondered if it might work to have the soft play and junior games downstairs with family changing and the pools, and then move men's and ladies changing upstairs. So you've got more like an adults level upstairs with men's changing, women's changing, the spa relaxation area, and that cafe area upstairs. And I know the answer, I know the point would be, well, then people have to come downstairs to the pool, but I've definitely been to places where you get in the lift or go down the stairs, maybe even like there's another stairs. You go in one way to the changing rooms, then you come down some stairs on the other side to the pool. And of course, there are definitely adults who have access needs, and they wouldn't be able to use the stairs, but there would still be the lift that could get them to the pool. I just wondered if that might work, to have all the more children-y stuff downstairs. I'm just thinking about the other member who was talking about the buggies, and I'm just thinking, if you've got a newborn and a toddler, you're taking soft play, you want to take your coffee, but actually you can't. You're kind of doing it all. Maybe carrying you've taken the carry cot off your pram frame, and you're juggling all these things. If they could be downstairs, that would actually solve this buggy problem, and also it would make the upstairs quite peaceful for the adults, because it wouldn't be soft play and all that kind of stuff.
One of the issues is that I think we can have a think about that. We did have some early thoughts about that. One of the issues is access control. So at the moment, you're free to bring your friends and playmates into this area. So you can come straight from the cafe into this area. But that is not true of the swimming area. This is a barrier. So here you have to cards and pay. So I guess you could have you'd have to have this area would be a sort of play area, and then you still have to have a barrier between the play area and the swimming area, but it would be all on one floor. So you sort of your children's lane would be here, right? And that would be close. And we'd have to find some way of reconfiguring this so that was some sort of better access to the cafe. But I'm just sort of trying to play with how that could work.
Yes, I think it wouldn't, not that there'd be free flow access between the soft play and the swimming pool. There'd definitely be wouldn't expect there to be a desk with a swiping thing, but just it was all on the same level, I think, on the downstairs level was the idea. But I'm sure, I'm totally accept that there might be lots of reasons why that wouldn't work and why people wouldn't want the adults changing upstairs, but just food for thought, I guess.
One of the things we do cater this, we have to cater for the whole generation. As you pointed out yourself, there are many members who would not consider themselves in the accessible disabled category, but nonetheless show a preference, not to deal with wet stairs and things like that. So I think there is an issue there. So I can see that. I think the point though about newborns and so forth and some sort of changing. There is a fear that we would never be able to accommodate all those buggies that can get into the East Wing. So we're not going to be able to exactly replicate the East Wing experience, but it doesn't mean that we can't accommodate some of them, and that might be sufficient most of the time, because you're really talking about 4 or 5 buggies at a time. You're not talking about 30. The 30 would have to be outside, but perhaps there's a way of getting a small number inside.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. Anyone else? Hermione, your hand's still up.
No, there is some comments in the chat that I just wanted to read out for you again. There's 2 separate things about quite different things. One is going back to the changing rooms, and it says the figures for changing rooms looks like 9% reduction in space for men, but 20% reduction for women. Is this conscious?
I don't think so. I think it's probably got as much to do with the intent is to be slightly more generous for men than for women. That's the objective. I think that this probably happens because I suspect that calculation is this whole area of purple. And you've got this area, which I can't say I've actually been into the ladies' changing, but this probably is not that functional. This is corridor space, really. So I think the intention is to be more generous to the ladies than to the men. And we need to confirm that we can achieve the layout and the quality of experience that we intend in this amount of space. And we haven't done that yet. But clearly, if we want to, assuming these still are on the ground floor, if we want to expand, this space, something will have to give. It may be that the second pool, if we don't do a second pool, we can obviously have much more space for changing. The dilemma, of course, is if we do have a second pool, usage of the pools will go up. We'll have a lot more lessons. We'll have a better experience for everyone. So usage of the changing room will go up. So, taking the second pool away gives us more space for changing. It probably also reduces demand. Other options, I suppose, would be to move some of the cafe seating into here. And then the other option, which came up today, is actually to extend the building here and to, there was a lot of controversy in 2018 about these trees, but there is a logic, it's clearer perhaps here, to fill in this corner here. That would be logical. It would also be quite expensive because building out is expensive, and that would certainly be controversial in Hurlingham, and it might not be allowed from the planners who'd like to keep trees and open space, but we don't know.
Thank you. The other comment is the comment that there may be only toilets on the first floor could be tricky. A lot of people use dry side for the toilets alone, and if prams cannot go to the first floor, then the only toilets in the club would be the far end of the playground or east wing that are easily accessible. This would also apply to wheelchair users. I would probably suggest toilets on the ground floor essential.
Yeah, okay. I think we've already identified, red flagged that as an issue. How much we can get is a question. There would almost certainly have to be toilets on the first floor and the ground floor. And I suspect that we will not get fully adequate provision on the ground floor. But of course, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have something.
Yeah, and following on from that, another comment. How will we manage WCs when events are on, e.g. the tennis? Will guests be in the changing rooms and have access to the pool? So that's just another thing to think about.
A very good question, unresolved. And there's a broader question about, we won't have separate dry and wet side, where will the professionals change and things like that. But, that hasn't been worked out yet, to be honest.
Another comment from the chat for you. The maximum option provides a larger spa, but it has a smaller soft play. This is a surprise. Why was this?
It actually has, the short answer is because, that's how the architects did it. It wasn't an objective. And the space is basically fungible. So we can, hold on, where am I getting the right, let me get the right picture. Yeah, here we are. I mean, we've got, I think we took this soft play and we've made a separate baby play area. Ruth, correct me if I'm wrong, I think actually, this actually is not necessarily smaller than the space, including the baby play. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So we've taken baby play out. So this combined area here is bigger than the previous soft play. But the spa is, it's difficult to know what's the right size for the spa, I'll be honest. And I think to a large extent, these things are fungible. So a perfectly reasonable comment, and this group doesn't surprise me, is why don't we have a smaller spa and more play here? Perfectly reasonable. Or another option is we extend the play area into the golf simulator area here, and we put the golf simulator somewhere else, or don't do it at all. So there's lots of fungibility on that. We are never going to have a big enough soft play to cater for the peak, but we can do better than we do at the moment.
Another question for you from the chat. With regards to an indoor space where dogs are allowed, is this something that is open to consideration given the number of people who have put it forward on the suggestion board, particularly given a lot of pubs/restaurants now allow dogs, so the club seems a little behind on this?
It's not part of the spec. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything about the design which necessarily operationally prevents it, but I mean, it's not really part of it's certainly not one of the objectives that we have. And I think, whether we allow dogs or not, I think that's an operational decision. It's not really a design architectural decision, unless there's something, but it's not part of the spec to the architects to provide a dog area. Whether at some date in the future, we allow dogs in some part of the thing, that's an operational decision, not a design decision. as far as I'm aware. If I'm stand to be corrected on that by dog owners, I'm afraid I'm not one.
And then would the outside pram area be covered, or could this be considered? Putting a kid in a wet pram is not a recipe for success.
Agreed. It's difficult. We can't put a cover here. This will not be allowed because of the Lutchens wall. And we don't really have an obvious space here. I mean, but I think we can think about it. I mean, we were, I mean, the people who were working with us were relatively robust on that, but I quite take the point. And, you know, we'll have a think about that, as well as about a space for some prams inside. It would have to be, it's going to have to be somewhere here. It can't be here, is the basic point. Any other questions in the chat or comments? Confirm. When you say confirm the figures, do you mean, when you say confirm the figures, you mean revise them?
Sorry,
I mean, these are
that table. It says baby play 20-20-20, junior games 80-80-80, soft play 80-91-80. So the explanation that was provided that said baby play has been moved out and made bigger isn't consistent with these figures. So it looks like the maximum option gives us, currently recognising it's fungible and it's all up for debate, but the current architect drawing and the if this table is correct, provides less combined childcare space in the maximum option than in the minimum option.
Yeah, which doesn't seem consistent with the drawing, does it?
No.
No. Okay, these were taken from the architect. So Ruth, perhaps you could, you know, go back and check exactly what they mean by baby play and soft play on these areas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks for pointing it out, Roshi. Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'm going to close that, and you know, thank you very much. We will be working on these plans, and I would think that probably in March or April there will be another round, and there will be more extensive communication and consultation over the summer, and that will also need to include a wider debate with membership about cost and membership fees and any implications, not just from the master plan, but from other capital and other projects that we need to do as well. But what we're trying to do is to find the sweet spot, which the great majority of members will support and can afford. Okay, thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I will no beforehand. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. And your time and attention is appreciated.